In this tutorial, we're going to focus on the rendering process. If you want to follow along, you can go in and open up this file. This is pendent B, the add materials file. We'll get to that in a second. But let me start first by just kind of explaining a little bit about the rendering process. So in Fusion, you have normally the model and the patch environment you may be working on to create geometry. And the third item there is the render workspace. So the basic process to go through and do renderings is kind of laid out right here with these at least three icons, I would say. First, you want to assign materials. That's the appearances. Okay. Next, you want to do scene setup. That's the environment lighting. That's adding reflectivity, adding the color, changing the color of the background, things like that. Then we can apply decals. This image you see here for the display is a decal. And then finally there is texture mapping, although this is probably better off handled through the appearance menu, so we'll talk about that. Alright, so let's go back to the add materials file, start there. Let's see where we're at here. There we go. Alright, so we'll switch down to the render menu. Okay. Now, well, let me jump back real quick. I wanted to make this note. If you go and look under the modify menu, there are actually two choices there for doing, well, three I should say, doing these different materials. There are physical materials. So when you construct geometry, there's like a default steel I think that it uses. That's where it gets kind of like its moment of inertia, density, and so forth. So you can actually assign different materials to different objects. So if you're doing any kind of study that way, you can use it. The other choice is appearance, which is what we're going to focus on. Okay, so these are the ones that I've already loaded into the file, but we got quite an extensive library of other materials down here that we'll look at. And then finally there's a material manager, which you can add and subtract materials from. I think that's more on the physical materials. Alright, so let's jump back over. We'll go switch into the rendering module. There we go. Alright, so let's start with first the appearance. Okay, now we're going to use some of these pre-assigned ones here, but basically if you just start twizzling open any of these folders here, you can start looking for different kinds of glass. These are smooth glass here. You can usually get a variety of different colors. These are starting points. You can tweak the colors to whatever you want to. You may get some glass that are textured. Now there are some that are actually you got to download. That's what that symbol right there indicates, needing to download. So you just click on it and it would indicate that it's downloading. Once it's done, you can assign it and go through that. Let's see, look under metals, probably the most extensive one that they have that's there. So basically the way you assign materials is simply grab the thumbnail, drag, and drop it on geometry. Okay, and then let go. The geometry will highlight so you can tell what it is. There's two basic ways to assign materials. One is to assign to the bodies and the components. So if I drop it on here, the whole leather band gets assigned that material. If I come back and I wanted to, for some reason, let's go ahead and set it up real quick, another leather material that's like this leather glossy, I will switch this to faces and then drag and drop it. Now it's going to be applied to just that outside edge. Okay, and this one actually has several. You can see all the little pieces. Actually, let me do it this way. Switch this back to bodies, drag and drop, and tell it to remove all that. Okay, now I'll switch it to faces and drag and drop kind of on this area, and that's going to go through and assign it to those faces, and then we got the edges all covered that way. Okay, so you can definitely do that as far as assigning material. As you can see, you can drag it from the library and assign it, or you can pre-drag it from here. Later on, if you are wanting to replace a material, so let's say for some reason we want to go with blue edges, you simply can grab from the library. Let me, nothing else to download. Okay, I'll grab this one that's blue. Tell it to download here. So that's a little icon that gives when it's downloading. Once it's done, it'll look like that. and then you can assign it. So what you can do also is drag and drop on top of one of these other icons that is already assigned. There we go. So like if I go in and drag and drop it on the black leather, it gets replaced with the blue leather. Okay, and if I grab from the library and drag and drop on it, I can replace it that way. Okay. All right. So like this black, I'm gonna drag and drop it onto the black ring there. Let's try that again. Now, gotta be careful. I've set this up for faces, so if I start applying, it'll be a bunch of little faces I have to do. So I'll switch it back to bodies, drag and drop it, and now I can replace that. So there's a lens here. Let's go ahead and grab this glass material, drag and drop it on there. And then finally, there should be a chrome material, which I'll sign right there. Okay. Now, most materials, you may want to change colors or something like that. To do that, you simply go in and double click on the material icon. Here's the color palette. You can also go to color libraries. This is all like the Pantone colors that you might have available. Okay, let's use that one. So we adjust that. Undo that. Let's see. There we go. Bring back that. There we go. So other attributes, now it's going to vary depending on the material that you're working with. Here's roughness that you can adjust on this one. Right now I would stick away from advanced. This gets into a lot more attributes than you probably have time to figure out what to do with. Okay, but one I think that is important to understand is like any material that has kind of a texture to it, such as this leather. Let me double click on it. One important value that usually comes into play is the scale. And that'll change the size of that. Now it's real sensitive, as you can see. I mean, I literally went from 38 to 44, and it's so tiny now. So keep that in mind. Some of these things may be really sensitive, so using that right there is a great way to kind of ease through it. You can also rotate this if you want to kind of do some patterns like that. And there's some other values there. Okay, so you can edit to that extent. Alright, now we basically got all the materials assigned, but let's do the decal next. Okay, to get that, we need to actually turn this surface off the lens here. So turn off the visibility of that. Going to go in and use this tool here to apply a decal. Okay, so let's click on that, bring that up. You go through and select faces to do this. Normally you want to chain it, so if you've got several faces butting up, you can easily apply a texture or decal to go over several of those. In this case, we actually don't want to do that, okay? Because I just want to pick this one face all by itself. Now I need to select the image. This is one thing that is not uploaded to the cloud. You got to pick it off your desktop. So click on that. It'll take JPEGs, PNG, TIFF, all kinds of images. So I got this watch face here ready to go. And let me go to the top view. It's got the basic texture controls here. So if we can get it to snap kind of in the middle, rotate it like 90 degrees, and then we'll grab that to scale it up and a little bit off. Let's see if we can move it over just a hair. Center it that way. Alright. So pretty easy to work with, basic set of controls that you see there. Once you got where you like it, just click OK and go back, click on this home icon to do that. Alright, so there's kind of the basic setup. Let's bring the lens back on. Okay, next thing is to kind of go through and do the lighting and what frame we want to render and all that. So that's handled under the scene settings. Okay, so let's start first here with the background. This is set to solid color. So if we click on that, you can change the color. Usually a gray background you can apply and see what it looks like. It's probably a good one to render off of. The other choice is the environment. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we'll do solid with that. You can also do reflection, so being a nice reflection of your object that you're looking at. So turn that on. You can also rough this up so it kind of fades out. So it won't be as distinctive reflection, so keep that in mind. Down here under aspect ratio, let's go to 4:3. So whenever we render, it's going to be like 1600 by 1200 pixels, something like that with it. This helps us to frame. So whatever you see here, as you adjust your views and stuff, that's what's going to end up getting rendered in that frame. Okay, so that's that setting. There is a depth of field this works when you're in ray tracing. So if I come over here and turn on this in-canvas rendering, that is ray tracing. You can see that it's already sort of fuzzing things up. Let's click on this corner right there, and adjust the blur down a little bit. Ooh, this once again looks like it's pretty sensitive. But that's how you do. You can play with that. It's a neat effect if you want to focus in on something. So look at that way. All right, now the question is, so this right here is this what we call in-canvas rendering. What that does is it starts the rendering as an iterative. So if I start moving around the view, it goes back to the beginning and restarts the process. This gives you a little time indicator here, elapsed time, and what it's working towards is this excellent, which is pretty good. But it'll take a lot of iterations to get there to do that. But this is kind of like, oh, it gives you a quick little, that looks good, that looks bad, and if you don't like it, change it real quick. So that's what you do with that. Now, under environments, currently we have this rim highlight, so that's that little highlights that you see there. You got all different kinds of what we call studio lighting. So if I want to do cool lighting, just simply drag and drop it into the window. Give it a second to load up. Let it go through and do the rendering process again. You can then kind of get a feel for the highlights and all. So like this big highlight right there is actually from these little white panels that you see there. Okay, they have that kind of effect on them. Let's see, anything else? We were on highlights. Now, certain ones like snow feel, let me just show you what happens with this real quick. The color of the materials do really represent like the environment that it's in. So you notice this one's got kind of this bluish tint because of the background color sets there. Do soft light. Let's try that one real quick. Alright, we'll go with that. It's part of the one we want to do. Okay, now you can do some changes, like if these highlights are not where you want, you can come back over to the settings tab, click on position, and you can grab this little slider. Like rotating it around is a great way to kind of adjust how those background light panels and so forth hit geometry, especially on something like this, which is going to reflect a lot. It's important to kind of make sure it doesn't distract from the image and what you need to do with that. Okay, get done with that, just click on this icon again and it goes away. Alright, so right now we've been doing this in-canvas rendering. You can let it get all the way over here to excellent, as long as you don't change anything or move it around, and then do a quick capture image if you wanted to do something like that. Okay, but typically what you really want to do, let me turn this off, is actually use this render option here. Okay, when you click on this, this is going to open up the render setting windows. Up here allows you to select the size rendering you want to do. This is 1600 by 1200, so it's that 4:3 ratio. Okay, you can see right there, you decide which kind of output. Now there's two ways to render. Rendering in the cloud requires some credits, okay, but as a student you get unlimited credits, although you can only use 16 at this time. So keep that in mind. It all really depends. I just saved something and it cranked through my renderings in less than 5 minutes. So, you know, usually it's better than the time that says there as far as the renderings and all. We'll get one started here in a second to do that. I'll just go ahead and do it. Alright, so it's submitting it. Cloud rendering started for that. Now, let me show you one other thing. We'll do this one locally. So that's kind of an overall view. Let me zoom up. Get a nice close view of the display. Go back here, I'm right mouse click on name views, and I'm going to make a new name view. Now it's at the bottom of that list. You can double click on it. We'll call this one close up once you get it done. Okay, and so now I can easily switch between home and close up by just doing that. Okay, now let me render this one locally. Okay, here on my machine. We'll use all the same settings that you see there, and I'll hit render. Okay, just as a quick comparison between the two, how fast they go. Now basically, if you click on these, you can watch them render. It's sort of the same process as you see here. It's going to go through and keep refining this image, you know, based on whatever quality settings you have. This will move along slow sometimes and then a lot faster. Let's go to the next one. So here's the local rendering. And this one will probably slowly move across, whereas this other one will probably jump at different times, as you can see there. Okay, But either ways works as far as that to render. Now, let me jump over to this other file that had some finished renderings in it. Okay, so now the rendering gallery will show you and keep these renderings in the cloud for you. As you can see, this actually also, when I save this, I didn't have these, I kind of deleted them early, put them back in. But here are the collection of renderings. Some of these orthographics are kind of neat, the views and stuff you get with them. So, nice straight-on view there. You can see the realism of this material is really great nowadays, what they can achieve with this. But any of these views you like, you gotta download them from the cloud if you want to use them like in a presentation. Right there's the option to do that. Okay, to download it. Actions here, you can adjust some exposures and so forth, or you can delete the image. And that's a turntable rendering, spinning around if you wanted to render something like that and have it to use in the presentation. Alright, that is a quick overview of the rendering process.